Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me check my volume. It is 3:25 p.m. on a Tuesday. I hope everyone is doing alright. Coming up this evening at 5 p.m., Gerald Horne is going to be here. That is like an hour and a half from now. That is going to be an amazing interview. PhD Gerald Horne, so I should say Dr. Gerald Horne. We're going to have an amazing conversation on American history and bring that up into the current political context that we have at our disposal. That is going to be an amazing talk. So there's that. Also coming up, Michael Horn is going to be here. Now, Michael Horn is going to be here on May 1st. Michael Horn is a UFO investigator. Let me just say it this way. He pushes a particular person that I'm not sure if I'm 100% behind. So that should be an interesting conversation nonetheless. But the one coming up today at 5 p.m. is Gerald Horne. Oh, I can't wait for that one. I there's certain interviews that I have that I'm eager to have because I'm fired up about the conversation. I love historical context. I love historical conversations. Oftentimes, people think that history is boring because that just took place back then. No. Whatever is taking place to you right now within your wider world is coming from some historical context. And the narratives are often argued about on whether those people were the tenor of those people. For instance, Abraham Lincoln was trying to get rid of the slaves. Like the great emancipator was trying to get the slaves out of the country. Like those little historical tidbits get lost in the narratives that we create around our own iconography. So Gerald Horne, that's going to be amazing. 5 p.m. today. Thing I want to talk about today is yesterday I've given Rand Paul a fair amount of good job Rand Pauls. I've done a few of those. Now that's rare for me to do that with a Republican because it's rare that a Republican meets my value system where I could say good job. Whether he was doing a sit-in for Congress against this anti-war thing, there are a lot of his values that I don't buy into. But on the very specific two main points, this kind of libertarian or American libertarianism values of the criminal industrial complex is a problem, and we need to stop mass warehousing human beings, especially from the standpoint of drug laws. We need to cut that out. It's not good to put people in cages. But also from the standpoint of war. We need to have less war. We need to stop spending our resources into wars and killing and maiming other people. We need to stop that. That's a bad thing. We have other things that we can be using our treasure for, not to killing other people. So you can understand my somewhat dismay in the moment. I might have shown like a micro expression in the moment when I saw in the corner of my eye that as I was having a conversation about something, I don't remember exactly what it was yesterday, he says, as we speak, Rand Paul is voting to allow ex-spook Mike Pompeo to be head of the Secretary of Defense. He's changing his vote. Now, this is fascinating to me. Well, what do you mean he's changing his vote? Rand Paul has this principled view of the world that Rand Paul doesn't deviate, like his dad, from that principled stance of the world. Does Mike Pompeo fit into Rand Paul's principled stance of the world? Let's see. So, he said he changed his vote. Before we get into that point, let's get into Mike Pompeo. This is the Harzat. United States new Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has a hawkish history on Iran and Israel. Hawkish? What do you mean hawkish? When people say hawkish, they tend to mean that those people tend to be neocons. They tend to be somewhat extremists and trying to push for either regime change or somehow attacking those countries. It gets us involved further ensconced in the military conflicts. Now, Mike Pompeo, and United States President Donald Trump's nominee to replace Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, has a record as a strong supporter of the Israeli government and a fierce critic of the Iran nuclear deal. Pompeo spent the last 15 months as the director of Central Intelligence Agency, and prior to that was a member of Congress for 5 years representing the 4th Congressional District of Kansas. Now, fair enough, I'm putting this article for people to read. I have a few of these, so I want to get to them. I'm just going to make a point. Mike Pompeo. President Trump's pick for Secretary of State just confirmed hundreds of Russians were killed in the United States attack on Syria. Now, he says this with a certain amount of glee, which is a little strange, seeing as you're talking about something that could start a world war. President Trump's nominee served Secretary of State to serve as Secretary of State, confirmed Thursday that a couple of hundreds of Russians were killed by U.S. forces in Syria earlier this year. Mike Pompeo, who currently serves as CIA director, offered confirmation in response to the questions about U.S. relationship with Russia. The February attack by U.S. Special Forces, acknowledged at the time by Russians and Syrian officials, but until now unconfirmed by the United States, targeted pro-government Syrian forces who were working alongside of Russian mercenaries. Understand what we're saying here. The United States, who's in a country illegally, by the way, because it's not our country, it's not on the border of North Carolina. We are not under a threat. We are not under attack. Syria has not declared war on the United States, at least by the law, by the United States law. Anyway, that's the only thing we can go by. What we're doing in that country is illegal. By international law, what we're doing in that country is illegal. And we're saying that we are targeting the government of that country for some kind of strikes or whatever. And in targeting the government of that country, the ally of that country, Russians were killed in those strikes. That's what's being said. Let's keep going. I want to put a fucking filter on what's being said. Pro-government. No, it's the government of Syria. It's the forces that are aligned with the government of Syria. And Russia, who is aligned with the government of Syria, who have the legal jurisdiction to be there, helping the legal owners of the country, the Syrian government. These people were killed by the United States. In Syria, now, handful of weeks ago, Russians met their match, Pompeo told Senate Foreign Relations Committee. A couple of hundred Russians were killed. A United States official previously said the U.S. had communicated with Russia prior to the attack, and no Russian government forces were killed. The reason why they said that is because the last thing you want is for Russia to come out saying Russian government forces were killed, and Russia has to explain why they didn't do anything about it. If they told you that they were unconfirmed, it's for the same reason that Syrian government says we shot down all of these things when they probably didn't shoot down anything out of the sky. They've attacked us, and we've shot down 6 of their missiles, and the other 2 landed in the open field. There was no damage. The Syrian government says it all the time. They're usually lying. Or at the very least, I would argue they're lying. But they're lying for a reason. They want to appear a particular way. It's the mechanics or the mechanics of propaganda. From a United States standpoint, and even from a Russian standpoint, it gives less latitude to act if the public knows that Russians were killed in a United States strike. And the Russian government didn't do anything about it. Russian government didn't do anything about it because they don't want a world war. Good job telling people. So Rand Paul, who's dealing with this person who's gleefully talking about Russians being killed, had pointed issues for Pompeo himself. He had questions for the ex-top spook. Let's hear Rand Paul himself. I want to be fair to Rand Paul.
Branch having that power. In fact, Madison wrote very specifically, he said,
Round, but thank you.
Thank you. Senator Portman. Senator Paul, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony, and thanks for going through this grueling enterprise and your willingness to serve the country. You discussed with Senator Kaine a little bit about whether or not the president has the authority to bomb Assad's forces or installations in Syria. And you mentioned historically, well, we've done it in the past. I don't think that's a complete enough answer. I mean, my question would be, do you think it's constitutional? Does the president have the constitutional authority to bomb Assad's forces? Does he have the authority, absent congressional action, to bomb Assad's forces or installations?
Senator, as I think I said to Senator Kaine, I'm happy to repeat my view on this. Those decisions are weighty. Every place we can, we should work alongside Congress to get that. But yes, I believe the president has the domestic authority to do that. I don't think that has been disputed by Republicans or Democrats throughout an extended period of time.
That's actually wrong, by the way. Wrong answer. That's a completely wrong answer. It's not about your view, man. I don't care about your view of things. It is what it is. That's constitutional authority, meaning it's Congress that makes the determination of war, not the President of the United States. There are certain things that the President can do within his discretion, but we're not under attack. Syria has not declared war on us. Syria is not attacking us. We are in that particular country declaring a war of aggression. You're wrong. You're completely wrong. Let's keep going. At the very least, Mattis had the discretion to say it was complicated. He didn't want to say illegal, but he went with the term complicated. This goofball says, yes, it's president's purview if the president want to willingly bomb and attack some other country. Yeah, that's wrong. Let's hear Rand Paul's response.
Actually, it's disputed mostly by our founding fathers who believe they gave that authority to Congress. And actually, they're uniformly opposed to the executive branch having that power. In fact, Madison wrote very specifically, he said, the executive branch is the branch most prone to war. Therefore, we have, with studied care, vested that authority in the legislature. So the fact that we have in the past done this doesn't make it constitutional. And I would say that I take objection to the idea that the president can go to war when he wants, where he wants. With regard to
He's right. Absolutely, completely, flat fact, no hedge. He's right. He's absolutely right. Pompeo, the person who's running for this, is saying that the president can bomb whoever the hell the president wants. He's in the Secretary of State. He was the next spook. So yeah, he may have a certain disposition to think that, but that's not necessarily true. And it's somewhat worrying that the person who Donald Trump is trying to put into that spot, put into any spot, has this belief that the president can go willingly bombing whatever he wants. Rand Paul is right. This is why, on limited cases, I've liked Rand Paul. Would never vote for him. I hate his other policies, but in those very specific camps, libertarians are correct, or at the very least they dovetail with lefties. Let's let him keep going. Let's see what else he has to say.
To Afghanistan, some have argued that it's time to get out of Afghanistan. What do you think?
Senator, I think the course of action that President Trump has taken there is the right one. It is humble in its mission. It understands that we've been there an awfully long time. It has an objective of leaving, but is not prepared to leave until such time as we can put America in a position where we can greatly diminish the threat to our homeland from terrorism that may emanate from there. And with an effort alongside that, which will be required to achieve that first objective, to create, I want to be humble, more stability in Afghanistan.
Well, actually, the president has been very specific at times on this, and he said it is time to get out of Afghanistan. We are building roads and bridges and schools for people that hate us. It is not in our national interest. That's a direct quote. So the president said it was time to get out. It sounds like you say it's time to stay. Is that a difference in opinion? Some here worry that you're going to be too much in agreement with the president. I actually worry you're going to be too much in disagreement with the president. One of the things I have liked about the president is he says it is time to come home. Let's declare victory and come home. But it sounds to me like you were saying we need to stay.
Senator, sounds like I have a Goldilocks problem. Too close, too far. Different porridge for each. Senator, the president also said in the summer at Fort Myer that he was committed to the mission that I outlined there. That's consistent with what Secretary of State has been trying to do diplomatically. It's consistent with what Secretary Mattis has been trying to do by supporting Afghan forces in the country. I believe, and I share the president's view, that we have a continued role there. And while I want to get out in the same way you do, I have friends who are serving there. I've had friends, as I know you would, who have been injured. We're not at a place yet where it's appropriate to do.
Here's the problem is, are we ever going to be at that place? I mean, so you've got people, the administration, yourself now saying in your written questions back to me that there's not a military solution.
By the way, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. It's like, I don't want to say anything bad about what the President of the United States is saying on this, because the President of the United States appointed me to the spot. I'm supposed to be his yes man to some degree, but I have thoughts of my own. So I'm not going to necessarily say the president is wrong. I'm going to meld my perspective into what the president is kind of saying on this. Now, Rand Paul is making a point. Look, the president said he wanted to leave. He wanted to leave. I'm done. I want to leave. Why are we building roads for people who hate our guts? Now, I don't necessarily like that particular disposition, meaning that's a specific way of looking at it, but I don't care. If he wants to leave, good. Get from out there. We shouldn't be over in those countries. It's not legal to be in those countries. Why are we there? So I agree with Rand Paul on this. I guess my issue with Pompeo is Pompeo doesn't agree with that. And Pompeo's statement is this kind of, well, we could be there forever. It's this nebulous, well, I mean, it's not time to go yet. It's not quite right. I mean, it's, it's not quite at a boil in the way that we needed to be at a boil. This egg is, not quite done. Is it ever going to be done? Is it ever going to be done? And what is the situation when you yourself are creating somewhat of the havoc and the chaos in that particular region of the world? Meaning, it can never be done. Like, you've created the situation that can never be melded because there's no military solution to that particular issue. And you yourself are an irritant in that country, meaning us. We're an irritant in that country. We need to get out. We need to get out. This is not us building a Marshall Plan. This is us pissing people off and propagating that exact system that we say we're there fighting. We're creating our monsters. Let's keep going.
So we're sending our GIs out there to risk life and limb when there is no military solution, hoping that sounds a little bit like Vietnam, hoping that we get to a little position, let's bomb the crap out of them to get them to negotiate, and we'll get to a little better negotiation. In the end, it was no better in Vietnam. It was still a disaster in the very end, and a lot of people wasted their lives in the end for that. I think that there is no military mission, and when you admit there's no military mission, it is hard for me to square with your desire still to stay. And we say, well, we want to leave, but when? We've been there 18 years. I think we should declare victory and come home. I think we won the battle. We did. We literally did win. There's nobody left alive who plotted to attack us on 9/11. I've asked people repeatedly, tell me the names of those left alive in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, anywhere in the world. We're now sending people to war who weren't even born when 9/11 was. And every administration comes, not just Republican, Democrat, they come and say, oh, well, it's just fine. We're going to keep fighting these wars. And it's like that it has something to do with 9/11. No, it has nothing to do with 9/11. Everybody around the world that is a radical Islamist we now are at war with because we said, oh, we got the permission to go at 9/11. But when you were in Congress, you had a little bit different position. Your position with Libya was that we should get authorization. Your position in 2013 was also, you wrote an op-ed with Tom Cotton saying, well, we should give the president the authority he needs to go into Syria. Not because you were like me that we shouldn't get involved in another war, because you were eager to get involved and you wanted to give the president permission and say, please, President Trump, let's go to war in Syria. But I think we need to think these things through, and we need to not be so carte blanche that the Constitution does give just carte blanche, permission for the president to do whatever he wants. Do you think the Iraq War was a mistake?
So I was running a machine shop in Kansas at the time, so I don't have a contemporaneous view that I expressed.
No opinions back then? How about opinions now?
I may well have had an opinion.
But
no, my opinion now is, look, we had bad intelligence. I've been one of the few CIA directors who's been willing to say we get it wrong, in spite of all the enormous resources.
But it's not just bad intelligence.
But we did have bad intelligence.
We did geopolitically the wrong thing. We got rid of the enemy of Iran. We emboldened Iran. We made it worse. We brought chaos to the Middle East. We are still suffering the ramifications and repercussions of the Iraq War.
Listen to what he's saying. I mean, because this is... There are times where I love Rand Paul. Like, what he's saying is absolutely right. It's not just bad intelligence. Like, it's not, yeah, we got that part wrong on paper. No, what you did, meaning even if your intelligence was right, you've created chaos all over the world. And the person who you consider to be your enemy, you embolden based on your bad choices. It's not just bad intelligence. It's also taking a bad action. Even if your intelligence was right, it was still a bad action. Let's keep going. That's an important point. I just wanted to put a pin in it. Keep going.
But your president said it very clearly. He says that the Iraq War was the single worst decision ever made. So once again, I'm concerned that you won't be supporting the president, that you will be influencing him in a way that I think his inclinations are actually better than many of his advisors. That the Iraq War was a mistake, that we need to come home from Afghanistan. He was against being involved in Syria at many times in his career. So I think he does have good instincts. And my main concern is that will you be one who will listen to what the president actually wants instead of being someone who advocates for us staying forever in Afghanistan, another Iraq war, bombing Syria without permission? So these are the advice you will give. And I guess that's my biggest concern with your nomination, is that I don't think it reflects the millions of people who voted for President Trump who actually voted for him because they thought it'd be different, that it wouldn't be the traditional bipartisan consensus to bomb everywhere and be everywhere around the world. So that's my main concern, and I just want to make sure that that's loud and clear to everyone. That is my concern.
Thank you.
Great. No issues with that at all. Rand Paul, that's his concern. He spoke to Mike Pompeo. They had it out. Clearly, Mike Pompeo does not agree with the stuff that Rand Paul is pushing on this. He was giving squishy answers that Rand Paul was making. So Rand Paul was a no vote. I don't like this. I don't like this guy. This guy is pushing war. I'm against war. I'm a libertarian. I'm philosophically against these things. Not just philosophically. They don't make necessarily good sense. So I just want to focus on America. I'm against these issues. Fast forward. Yesterday. This.
to try to have Fourth Amendment protections for Americans. And so with all that being said, I have changed my mind. I've decided to go ahead and vote for Director Pompeo because he's assured me that he's learned the lesson. Now, time will tell if those assurances are true or not. And I won't say that I can say with absolute certainty I know what his opinions will be and how they will come out over time. But I do take him at his word that he does and has incorporated the idea that the Iraq War was a mistake. And I think that is a step forward, particularly for our side, to have anybody say that, because I'm sure if we had a vote on my side, I would probably lose that vote in the committee even. But I do think that the country understands that the Afghan war has gone on for 18 years and they're ready for some other ideas. I hope that they'll let Trump be Trump and that Pompeo will be a constructive influence and not a destructive one. But from what I've been told and listened to with the director, I think that he is open and understands that his job is that the president is his boss and will listen. And I hope that all of us, the country, really will rethink how many wars we need to be involved in and whether they're constructive or destructive. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless someone...
Shame. Shame. Shame, sir. Shame on you. You've sat there and repudiated everything that you believed in. In that one vote, you repudiated everything you believe in. You know goddamn well Mike Pompeo just shot you down in one thing after the next. Do you agree that the Iraq War was a mistake? Couldn't even answer that question. Do you believe that the president has the regular, just domestic authority to willy-nilly bomb Syria? He shot you down on that. And everything that you asked, he shot you down on. And your no vote was based on this idea that Mike Pompeo was somewhat of a hawk, that Mike Pompeo was against your value system. And you voted for him nonetheless. You voted for him nonetheless. What do values come in when you have a party loyalty to adhere to? This is him on Fox News explaining his shameful support of Pompeo.
All right, so we begin with a Fox News alert. Mike Pompeo, President Trump's pick for Secretary of State, barely avoiding a rare rebuke from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee after some unexpected last-minute drama on both sides of the aisle. Senator Rand Paul reversed course and voted yes to recommend Pompeo for Secretary of State, but that left the vote with a 10-10 tie, which is essentially a fail. It was Democratic Senator Chris Coons who handed the Republicans a victory by changing his no vote to present, making the final.
Chris Coons, the most racist name in Congress, the Democrat changes his vote to allow him to go through the rest to the floor, meaning to a floor vote. Just know, just so we're clear, it wasn't Rand Paul alone that allowed this. A Democrat was also part of the mix in order to get Mike Pompeo over the hurdle. Let's keep going.
Tally 11-9. That's how things work. In the Senate committees, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul joins me now. Senator, good to have you with us tonight. First question, what changed your mind when you met with Mike Pompeo?
You know, one of the things I've always liked about President Trump was that he's unequivocally says the Iraq War was a mistake. What I've been concerned about with Director Pompeo is I wasn't sure if he shared the president's vision because, you know, the Iraq War and regime change led to a lot of chaos in the Middle East. Same thing happened in Libya when we did regime change. And so I want whoever's to be Secretary of State to understand where President Trump's coming from. And so last week, the president asked me to meet with Director Pompeo, and out of respect for the president, I did meet with him. Then we talked again today. I've talked to the president several times. And the president reiterated in very strong terms that we've been at war in too many places for too long. And I think the president's going to surprise a lot of people by really, really trying hard to get us extricated from some of these wars.
Did he assure you that he would leave Syria?
I love that. You know, sometimes Fox News gives harder interviews than many of the other networks. I don't know why. She asked him a question about Pompeo. Why did you change your mind on Pompeo? I mean, you were a no vote. We heard you on C-SPAN asking these kind of pointed questions, and he did not live up to what you wanted in those pointed questions. He was squirrely on some, and in some he just essentially rebuffed you. What changed? Why on earth did you go from a no vote to somebody who did not represent your values, and you always scream about your values, meaning libertarians, to all of a sudden turning this into a yes vote? What changed? He dodged talking about the Iraq War vote, and she brings it back. No. Did he say something to you specifically that got you to change your mind from yes to no? That's a good question. I'm curious about the same thing. Let's see.
I think it wasn't so much specific on timetables and places, but I would tell you that the president and I share a great deal when we talk about the desire to bring some of our troops home and to have our troops protecting our country and not spread out across the world. And so I think you'd be surprised when you see and hear the conversation between the two of us. And really, I've always been an advocate. I mean, Trump was probably the closest to me on foreign policy of any of the other 16 running. And so I've always been an advocate and a supporter of the president on this. Yeah. And I want to make sure the people around him share his vision. And over time, I'm coming to believe that, and I'm hopeful, that Director Pompeo does share that vision. But the president told me one way or another, it's his vision, and he's not going to be persuaded to start more land wars and have hundreds of thousands of troops in the Middle East, no matter who's around him. We'll see,
President Macron is...
Hope. Hope. That great hope. I just hope. Essentially, the president is close to my ideals, and so I just gave him the vote. It's nothing that happened with Pompeo. It's nothing that changed with Pompeo in that particular pick. Pompeo is going to be whispering into Donald Trump's ear similar things that he was saying at that meeting. Like, I guess my point is, nothing changed. Nothing at all changed. The only difference, the only thing that changed his mind was, look, I trust Donald Trump on foreign policy, and he was somewhat closely related to me on foreign policy, and so I'm supporting the president. That's it! This has nothing to do with principle or anything else. Nothing changed. He didn't give him any timeline. He didn't give him anything. Pompeo can make any choice and whisper into the president's ear whatever he wants to. And this principle stand by Rand Paul fell apart. Fell completely apart. Rand Paul gives him his vote just because it's Donald Trump and he wanted to be friends with the president. And he hopes that even though this neocon is whispering into Donald Trump's ear, that Donald Trump is not going to listen to the neocons that he surrounded himself with. John Bolton being one of them. I understand what Rand Paul believes, what he thinks. I understand he wants ponies and impossible things. But the fact is, Donald Trump is surrounding himself with a bunch of neocons. Yes, Mike Pompeo talking to Kim Jong-un, that's somewhat of a positive development. Let's see how that turns out. But this guy's a hawk. Call it what it is. This guy's a hawk. He couldn't even tell Rand Paul that the Iraq War was at fault, was a mistake. And even in that conversation, Rand Paul, he brings up the Iraq War. That has nothing to do with anything. Should you be in Syria? Yes or no? No, you shouldn't be in Syria. And from a libertarian standpoint, it's an illegal war. I mean, come on. He told you right to your face. Does the president have the capacity to bomb whenever the president wants? Yes, I believe that's true. No, I don't care what your beliefs are. The Constitution says something else. This guy was everything that Rand Paul hated. And Rand Paul still confirmed him. Politics runs deep, man. That's all I'm saying. Politics runs deep. Let's see who's here. I tend to think that people are policy. That the people who you surround yourself with is going to be the policy that you exude in your administration. I think that's because I think that's true. When Donald Trump is putting in these comic book villains into these spots, it's like people who are designed just purely to destroy the governmental apparatus itself. Putting, what is his name? The one he puts in the EPA. The guy was suing the EPA. He put it to the EPA. The woman who's for these religious schools that he put into the Department of Education. I can't think of her name at this moment. But these people are almost like specifically antagonistic towards the institutions that they themselves are supposed to run or they themselves are supposed to police. It's insane. It's utterly ridiculous. So, but Rand Paul, you let me down, dude. You let me down, dog. You let me down. You've let me down. So let's see who's here. Yeah, I trust Trump, Pompeo, and Bolton. They're good guys. They're not fucking good guys. Well, apparently somebody convinced Rand that Pompeo would follow Trump, not the other way around. Jelly donut. Yes, I agree with you on that. But that's lunacy. Like, I understand that politics to some degree is this kind of interpersonal thing. So they're talking to Rand Paul, and he's like, Rand Paul is not going to let me down, and all this other stuff. And the president is asking you to do something in the same way that Bush asked Hillary Clinton to bomb Iraq. Just because the president asks you to do something doesn't mean you should do it, especially if you're the guy who's so principled. My libertarian values. Yeah, okay. Your libertarian values. You voted Pompeo. That's what it boils down to. The guy who was laughing at killing a bunch of Russians. That's the guy who you voted for. The guy who told you that the president of the United States can bomb whenever he wants to, as if constitutional authority has nothing to do with it. That's the guy that you voted for. That is antagonistic to everything that you as a libertarian believe. And that guy told you that to your face while you were on C-SPAN. And then a few minutes later, it's not a few minutes, I know I clipped it in a way, but short time later, same C-SPAN, I'm voting for the guy who just told me that the president can bomb whenever the president wants to bomb and repudiates everything I believe as a libertarian. It's like, okay. Trump just bullies all these weak cucks in Congress. It's hilarious. I gotta be honest, man. I didn't think Rand Paul would just crumble in the way that he crumbled. Sad. Absolutely sad. If you trust Bolton and Pompeo, I wonder how you have stayed alive this long with the people you trust. Stephanie Chateau, I agree with you. Lucas Pompeo should be in prison. Oh, Pompeo should be under prison with Bush's administration, not in a position of power. They put a head spook in as the head of as the head of Secretary of State. Those are two vastly different dispositions. Like, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. So I'm going to end this here because I have another video that's coming up at 5 p.m. and I need to prepare for that video. Yeah, sad to see Rand Paul crumbles in this way. It just crumbles. Fell apart. Libertarian who? Libertarian who? Libertarian who? All right. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys. And again, Gerald Horn coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern. That should be a damn good interview. Thanks, guys.